And welcome to today's session. It's another fine day which God has allowed us to be together, and we appreciate Him for that. So I want us very straight. We go now to a very important topic, which is examination language, which we usually use when we are examining students. And I want very fast, we start with the name. When you are told to name, it must be a UPAC name. For example, if you are told the gas to be produced is carbon 4 oxide, don't say carbon dioxide, say carbon 4 oxide. And please, if you are told to write the formula, if you are told to name, don't write the formula. If you give the formula together with the name, then the formula must be correct. Any, you'll be penalized. Secondly, I request you, if you have got any question, you can just ask as we continue, because it will be very good, because you might tend to forget when you're asking. Now, when you're taught to identify, when you're taught to identify, you can give either the name or the formula. But if it's important you write the two, then both of them must be correct. For example, you can be given a diagram. You are told to identify gas M. If that gas M is hydrogen gas, you can either give H2, which is the hydrogen gas, or you can give the name, which is just hydrogen gas. Thirdly, you'll be told to state. If you are told to state one, you can be told to state the use. If you are told to state the use, it must be commercial use. For example, state 2 uses of oxygen. Don't say oxygen is used in respiration. That is not a commercial use. You can say oxygen is used in removing impurities in steel making. Remove impurities from iron during steel making. Secondly, you can also be told to state the observation. When you are told to state the observation, you must talk about the original color to the final color, failure to which you will be penalized. For example, if you are passing hydrogen gas through copper 2 oxide, then you must say the black copper 2 oxide changes to a brown substance or a red solid. Don't say red brown, just talk about one color. In your book for chemistry for paper 1, form 1, they talk about red brown. I'm a reddish brown. Talk about red solid or brown solid. Again, if there is formation of a colorless liquid, droplets, don't say a liquid condenses. Liquid can never condense. It's the vapor which condenses, or a colorless vapor condenses to form a colorless liquid. Mark it clearly. It should be the vapor condensing. It undergoes condensation so that it can be turned back to the liquid state. Thirdly, you can be told to state the law. For example, state Boyle's law. You state at constant temperature and pressure, at constant temperature, the volume of a fixed mass of a gas is inversely proportional to its pressure. Here you can see the condition. The condition there is about the constant temperature. So it must be very clear. Again, you can also be told, state Gay-Lussac's law. You are taught to state, you must state clear the condition. When gases react, they do so in all number ratios to one another and to the volume of products, if gaseous, at constant, mark, at constant temperature and pressure. Thirdly, fourthly, you can be taught to explain. Explain the trend. It can either be ionization energy. For example, the ionization energy, it decreases down group 1, still down group 2, because of the increase in atomic radius or atomic size. So in that case, show the comparative aspect and the reason. Still, you can be told, explain in terms of structure and bonding. For example, explain why magnesium chloride has a very high melting point and boiling point than phosphorus 3 chloride. So in that case, you need to show which kind of structure and what type of bond. For example, magnesium chloride has a giant ionic structure. Ions held together by strong ionic bond. So you are very categorical. There is a structure and the type of bond. While phosphorus 3 chloride is a simple molecular structure. Molecules held together by weak van der Waals forces. So you can see you are very specific to the structure and still the type of bond which is present in that compound. Still, you can be told, explain observation. For example, what happens when hydrogen gas is passed through copper 2 oxide? One, you don't need to repeat the same observation. Let's say hydrogen reduces copper 2 oxide to copper metal and itself is oxidized to water or hydrogen oxide. Mark, you are not repeating the same observation. You are giving the explanation for the observation. Next, you can be told to describe. In describing, you must indicate the apparatus which you are using. For example, describe how you can obtain oil from groundnuts. In that case, you need to place a few groundnuts in a motor. So the apparatus here, we have a motor. There's using a pestle, crush. So you can see, you are using the apparatus there. Then as you continue crushing, you add propanol or ethanol. Mark, you add ethanol or propanol. Then decant the resulting solution. Place the resultant solution in the sun for the solvent to evaporate. Then the remains will be now the oils. If you want them to be pure, then you add water and separate using separating funnel. So in describing, all steps must be clear. All steps are must. Marking stops where the sequence goes wrong. And again, where there is volume and molarity are present, show the concept of mole ratio. For example, using 100 centimeters cubed of 2 molar potassium hydroxide, using 100 or 200 centimeters cubed of 2 molar sodium hydroxide, describe how sodium or potassium sulfate can be prepared. So in that case, you need to show the mole ratio between the reaction between the sodium hydroxide and sulfuric 6 acid. The mole ratio is always 1 to 2. So always show the mole ratio. Next, and please, I'm waiting questions if you haven't got any question, you can show it out or you can text. Another term which you use is distinguish. For example, distinguish between isotopes and allotropes. In that case, you should show the difference between the two. For example, isotopes are atoms of the same elements with the same atomic number but different mass number. Same atomic number but different mass number. While the difference there, while allotropes, they are different crystalline, different crystalline forms of an element in the same physical state. The term crystalline form must be present. If not so, you'll be wrong. Different crystalline form of an element in the same physical state. Differentiate also atomic number and mass number. Can also be given that. So mass number is the sum of the protons and neutrons in the nucleus of an atom of an element, while atomic number is the number of protons in the nucleus of an atom of an element. Next, another term which you can use, or you can be given, we have equations. When you are taught to write an equation, one equation is correct and complete if it's balanced and as state simple. If it has no state simple, then you will be awarded a half a mark. That will be in a complete equation. While in a correct equation, you are awarded 0 mark. For example, you can be told, write the equation between potassium and copper 2 oxide. There will be a displacement there. And the condition there must be heat, which will be the activation energy. So in that case, you need to be very clear. Stay simple, clear, balancing also correct. Next, there are elements which you must mark the state simple. They are state simple. For example, we have potassium. Some students write potassium as like that, 1 and a C, to mean that it will be K. This would be incorrect. So we check very clear. It should be capital letter K, like that. So be very clear. Secondly, you can be told to write copper. Chemical symbol for copper, we have capital letter C and small letter U. Show that U, that tail, that loop. Show it. Again, we have chlorine. Write it as C and small letter I, capital letter I. Don't write it with a loop like this one. This will be incorrect, but this will be correct there. Next, we have silicon. Some students try to write as capital letter S, then I. That I without a dot there, then it will be a capital letter I. So the dot must be present there. Next, we have lead. If you write like that, this will be small letter p. That would be incorrect. So the chemical symbol for this should be letter P, show that P, then small letter B, like that. This would be correct. Again, we have iron, capital letter F. Some student write, this would be incorrect, or like this, will still be incorrect. Should be capital letter F, small letter I. Those are the very important symbols which you should check and which you can make you fail. In KCSE 2015, paper 2, they asked 7 different questions, which involves writing the chemical symbol for chlorine and the chemical symbol for aluminum. So for aluminum, it should be very clear, like that. Don't place with a loop. Don't place with a loop like that. So be very clear to what you are writing. Next. Next. We have formula for organic compounds. When you are told, for example, write the structural formula of pentane, structural formula for pentane, the bonds must be correctly directed. Also for ethanol, we have the structural formula for ethanol. First, write the molecular formula, which is C2H5 OH. When you are told open structural formula, open all the bonds. Like in this case, you now have C attached to C, attached to O, which is also attached to hydrogen. Open that bond. This will now be attached to hydrogen, attached still to hydrogen, hydrogen again, hydrogen here, hydrogen there. You are very clear, open structural formula. If at any case you don't open this, for example, C, OH, then it's clear, open structural formula. And you have not opened this, then it will be incorrect. You must open all the bonds. Clear? Next. But again, it comes where now you are told, draw isomers. Isomers, for example, in 2016, question 5, you are told, draw the isomers of pentane. Isomers of pentane. First, show the molecular formula of pentane, C5H12. Draw the straight chain, C attached to C, another C, and another C. The rest will be hydrogen, here. All these are hydrogen. You direct the bond like that. Like that. Secondly, remove this carbon 1, take it to carbon 3. Don't take it to carbon 2 because it will be still the straight, it will be the part of straight chain. So place it there to be like this now. CH3. You have placed it to carbon 3 like that. Now the name hydrogen. All these hydrogen, each carbon atom should have 4 bonds. all that, this is another state. You can also place this last carbon, you place it to carbon 2 again, that carbon 2. So in that case, it will be this kind of structure. CH3, CH3. This will be CH3, then this will be 2. So this carbon here to be tertiary carbon. So the name to be 2,2. The name will be 2, 2 dimethyl. They are 2. So you must show they are how many they are. Dimethyl propane. Saturated carbon. To mean that each carbon atom is attached to a single covalent bond. That's why we say saturated. Alkanes are saturated hydrocarbons. Next, complete or draw diagram. In that, the workability of the diagram is checked. For example, you are provided with a trough, sodium hydroxide solution, gas jar, burning candle. Draw the experiment to show how you can determine the percentage of oxygen in the air. So in that case, you can be told at the end of the experiment. So you must show that the candle went off and the volume of the sodium hydroxide increased. For example, now in your diagram, this would be a trough. So you show the volume of, first show the, that would be the gas jar. Then we have that volume of sodium hydroxide. Then it increased in the gas jar. Then here we have a candle which is up there, and it went off like that. So then from there, label. Don't fail to label. Trough, sodium hydroxide solution, candle, gas jar, like that. That question was there in 2017. Next, in calculation. When you are calculating, first, for example, where there is an equation, the equation is a must indicate the equation. Then rounding off is always penalized. If you want to round off, use 2, 3, 4 rule, where volume must be into 2 decimal places, molarity, a minimum of 3 decimal places, and moles, a minimum of 4 decimal places. Always avoid as much as possible rounding off. The calculations involving relative atomic mass, that is RAM, relative formula mass, RFM, or relative molecular mass. No units required. That means it should have no units because it's a ratio. Relative means you have already compared. So no units will at any given time be required in those calculations of RAM, RFM, and RMM. relative molecular mass. Any other calculations, units are must. And where you are not sure of the units, leave it without units. The examiner there will award you again molarity. You abbreviate it as capital letter M, no small letter m. Seconds should be small letter m and not capital letter S. Seconds, small letter S, not capital letter S. Where there is the expression of energy, should be kilojoules per mole. K is a small letter. J is the unit, which is supposed to be a capital letter J. Per mole. The mole there is small letters. M-O-L, small letters. Not capital letter K, small letter J, capital letter J, and small capital letter M-O-L. That will be penalized. Units are penalized a half a mark at the final answer. Then lastly, when you are told to show on the diagram, it must be clearly on the diagram, not anywhere else. Clearly on the diagram. For example, you are given the electrolysis of aluminum oxide, molten aluminum oxide. So in that case, we have that one. Then we have the battery here. Then you are told, show the anode. So check the diagram. The anode is the one with the big arrow here. So in that case, show the one which is inside, not here. This will not be anode. The anode will be the one which is attached or which is in contact with the electrolyte. So this will be the anode. It's in contact with the electrolyte. If you indicate here, then you'll be wrong because it's not in contact with the electrolyte. Here, you are not in contact with the electrolyte. So that will not be the anode. The anode should always be in contact with the electrolyte, which now is that one. Clear? Any question up to that far? No, sorry. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Good. Now, areas of emphasis. We have the industrial processes And the industry of processes, industrial processes, one, we check the Form 1 process, which will be the fractional distillation of liquefied air. Fractional distillation of liquefied air. That is in Form 1. 2, we have the survey process in Form 2. Survey process. 3, we have the manufacture of ammonia, which we call it harbor process. Harbor process. 4, we have industrial manufacture of nitric 5 acid. Nitric 5 acid, which we call it Ostward process. Ostward process. 5th, we have the French process, that is the extraction of sulfur. Next, we have the manufacture of sulfuric 6 acid. Manufacture of sulfuric 6 acid, which you call it contact process. Next, we have the manufacture of hydrogen chloride, which is HCl. What you should emphasize on this, 1, check on the raw materials. Secondly, the sources of these raw materials. Sources of raw materials. For example, in the manufacture of ammonia, the raw materials here, we have nitrogen, which is a gas, and we have hydrogen, which is a gas. The sources of these raw materials, for example, nitrogen gas, this is from the air, that is through fractional distillation of liquefied air. Then the source for hydrogen gas, we have natural air. We still have electrolysis of brine. Electrolysis of brine. Again, cracking of alkanes. Then we have different types of cracking. We have the catalytic, we have thermal, and still the one which is not discussed in Form 3 book, which is steam cracking. So raw materials and their sources. Secondly, the equations involved. Thirdly, the steps. And fourthly, the mechanism, the reaction mechanism, that we can join together with the equations. Reaction mechanism. mechanism. Next, in paper 1, always there must be a law. So you need to remember all the laws which you have learned. Is that in form 2? In form 3, we have gas laws. We have Boyle's law. Boyle's law. We have Charles' law. Charles' law. We have Avogadro's law, which says equal volumes of gases have contains equal number of molecules. Still have Gay-Lussac's law. Lussac's law. We have the Hess's law. Hess's law. We have still the Cartesian principle. And we have Faraday's law. Faraday's law. Still on those laws, look on mathematical or numerical applications. Numerical applications of these laws. For example, the combined gas equation, which we call it the ideal gas equation. Ideal gas equation, which now is P1, V1 out of T1 is always equal to P2, V2 out of T2. This is very clear. Every time the temperature should be absolute temperature. Absolute temperature. When you're told to state Charles' law, it states that the volume of a fixed mass of gas is directly proportional to its or to absolute temperature. Don't leave the term absolute. If you leave, you'll be wrong. So is directly proportional to absolute temperature at constant pressure. The term absolute very necessary. Next, another area we should emphasize, gas preparation. Gas preparation. Like in form 1, you prepared oxygen gas. You used 3 different methods. We have heating of potassium manganate 7. Potassium manganate 7. Heat, adding water to sodium peroxide. Add water to sodium peroxide. Sodium peroxide. And lastly, catalytic decomposition of hydrogen peroxide. Those are the 3 methods of preparing oxygen. That's in form 1. Another gas which is also prepared in form 1 is hydrogen gas. And here, you looked on the preparation of that hydrogen gas by use of reaction of metal and acid. As to be specific, you reacted with zinc, which is solid. You reacted with HCl, which is aqueous, and this produced zinc chloride and hydrogen gas. Always I've said, you are writing equation, it must be balanced for it to be correct, and it must have state symbols for it to be complete. Then in form 2, you prepare carbon 4 oxide and strip carbon 2 oxide. In form 3, you prepared ammonia gas. You also prepared nitrogen gas, nitrogen 1 oxide, nitrogen 2 oxide, nitrogen 4 oxide. Then you went ahead, you prepared nitric 5 oxide fumes. And here the apparatus which you use retort flask. Not another flask, retort flask, because this nitric 5 acid gas is a very strong oxidizing agent. Very strong oxidizing agent. You went ahead again, you prepared hydrogen chloride gas. And this hydrogen chloride gas, you also prepared hydrochloric acid by dissolving the hydrogen chloride gas in water. So when you dissolve hydrogen chloride, which is a gas, you dissolve in water, dissolving that gas in water. This is not a chemical reaction. So you get hydrogen chloride, which will be an aqueous. So you indicate in the arrow the water because you are just dissolving. It's not a chemical reaction. It's not a chemical reaction. So those are the gases which you prepare in the form 4, in 844 level of, in form 4 level, up to form 4 level. Then another area which you should also emphasize is on organic chemistry. Organic chemistry. And here, look on the naming, which is nomenclature. Nomenclature. The isomers or isomerism. Isomerism is the existence of a compound is the same molecular formula but different structural formula. Those different compounds, they are known as isomers. Next, look on the addition reactions of alkenes and alkynes. Addition reactions. Addition reactions of alkenes and alkanes. And here, specifically, we have hydrogenation. Hydrogenation. That is addition of hydrogen. We still have halogenation. That is an addition of halogen to either alkene or alkyne. Then we have addition of halo. Hydrohalogenation. Hydrohalogenation. That is the hydrogen halides. Hydrogen halides. For example, hydrogen chloride. That's an addition of hydrogen and chlorine. So in this case is hydrogen halide. Hydrogen bromide. Still an example of hydrogen halide. Then we have addition of an oxidizing agent. And the oxidizing agent should be acidified. For example, acidified potassium manganese ion. That should be acidified. When you add it to ethene, you add it to ethene, you adding this substance there. So what you get there, it is an alcohol, which you commonly refer to as glycol. C, correctly direct the bond, or H. This bond here, the covalent bonds attached to carbon, to oxygen, still OH. This is what we commonly refer to it to as glycol. The chemical name for this, the IUPAC name for this, is ethane 1,2-diol. Ethane 1,2-diol. Next, we have addition of concentrated sulfuric 6 acid. Considering this, which is ethene, when you add it to sulfuric 6 acid, you get ethyl hydrogen sulfate. You get to ethyl hydrogen sulfate. Next, you can hydrolyze ethyl hydrogen sulfate. Hydrolyze ethyl hydrogen sulfate, this formula here. This, of course, is the ethyl hydrogen sulfate. You hydrolyze means you're adding water. Hydrolysis means, lysis itself means breaking. Hydrolysis, breaking using water. So you're breaking using water here. To remove this, here, what adds itself is OH. So you get an ethanol plus dilute sulfuric 6 acid. Next, we have the self-addition process or mechanism, which we call it polymerization. Polymerization. Conditions for polymerization, we have high temperature and pressure. High temperature and pressure. Those are the conditions. Talk about a temperature, high temperature is above like 450 degrees Celsius. That's why these are low temperature. But practically it's very high. Then the pressure of above 200 atmospheres. Those are the reactions. Then again, you also look on detergents. The cleansing action of soaps and soapless detergents. From detergents, You should also emphasize or look on the polymers. Polymers. Emphasize on condensation, polymerization. For example, the synthesis of nylon 6,6. Nylon 6,6. The reagents for production of this or for synthesis of nylon 6,6. Then also on addition reactions, addition polymerizations. We emphasize on the double bond and triple. Double or triple bonds. Up to that point, any question? You can post any question. Sample of questions which you can come across. Describe how lead 2 chloride can be prepared. Lead 2 chloride can be prepared. First, any method of preparing a salt depends on the solubility of that salt in water. So you need to remember the 4 rules of solubility of salts. The first, all nitrates are soluble, all sulfates are soluble, except calcium sulfate, which is partially soluble. Lead 2 sulfate and barium sulfate. Those are the only sulfates which are insoluble. Thirdly, all chlorides are soluble, except silver chloride and lead 2 chloride, which is soluble in warm water. Then lastly, all carbonates are insoluble, except carbonates of group 1 and ammonia. Ammonia always exhibits characteristics of group 1 elements, ammonium ion. So the moment you notice that this is an insoluble salt, the only method which you can use to prepare it is double decomposition. And in double decomposition, it involves precipitation reaction. Precipitation reaction. And double decompositions, it involves mixing 2 soluble salts to obtain 1 soluble and another insoluble. For example, lead 2 chloride is insoluble. So first prepare a soluble lead salt, and specifically lead 2 nitrate. Lead 2 nitrate is soluble. You react it or you combine it with a very soluble chloride, for example, sodium chloride. This will be aqueous, still this is aqueous, and this will obtain lead 2 chloride, which is solid, and sodium nitrate. Always balance that equation, 2 here and 2 there. When you are writing any equation on a single line and you find it cannot fit on that line, don't write the product as if they are in the reactant side. Always there is an imaginary line which must be separating the reactants from the product. So here, you need to know which salt you are preparing. And as you remember, I said where there is volume and molarity, involve the concept of mole ratio. For example, you are preparing sodium sulfate from a mixture, from a reaction of 200 centimeters cubed of 0.5 molar sodium hydroxide. And you want to prepare sodium sulfate. So the moment you want to prepare this, here you can use any reaction, but here you are going to specifically use a reaction between a base, which you are given, and an acid. So the acid which you are going to use is sulfuric 6 acid, which will be acid. So in that reaction, you need to understand the concept of mole ratio between the sodium hydroxide and sulfuric 6 acid. And you have to recognize very fast that the mole ratio of sodium hydroxide to sulfuric 6 acid is 2:1. So you need to have any. Here you are using 200 centimeters cubed of 0.5 molar sodium hydroxide. So in that case, you can have the volume, or you can have the molarity. So you can say, to the solution of sodium hydroxide, add 100 centimeters cubed of 0.5 molar sulfuric 6 acid. That there will be complete neutralization. Then heat the solution to saturation. Allow the saturated solution to cool to form crystals. Then dry the crystals between filter papers. Clear? Another question? Any question? Any question?
Yes. Okay, there is a question from Katelempu Center of Excellence, and they're asking, in pressure, instead of using atmosphere, that is ATM, can you use pascals, that is PSA?
Very good. You can use the particles, but the moment you are working out in the numerical, in solving the numerical problems, and ensure the units are the same, so that you can simplify the units. So you can use any units. You can use the units for pressure, can either be atmospheres, can either be particles, and 1 particle is an equivalent of 1 Newton per meter squared. You can even use millimeters of mercury. So here, the correlation which you use, 700 millimeters of mercury is an equivalent of 1 atmosphere. And 1 atmosphere is an equivalent of 105, approximately 105,000 particles, approximately. Another question?
They still have another question, and they're asking, when describing a method of preparation, is it a must to use chemical formula when describing the method?
There is something which I said, when in describing, the moment you are describing, you can use one, you must mention apparatus. Mention apparatus. Mention all the all steps. All steps are musts. All steps are musts. Thirdly, if any step goes wrong, then that's where the marking stops. So the moment you use chemical formula, here you can only be awarded for equations correctly. So you cannot score all the marks. Good. I'm waiting for more questions, if any. Yeah, you can raise up your hand if you have got any question. From Kamudanga, yes.
There is a question from Kamudanga Secondary School. They're asking, can you be penalized when you write a correct chemical equation without balancing the equation?
Yes. An equation is always correct and complete. Mark those 2 points. Correct if it's balanced, complete if it has state simple. Incorrect equation is always awarded 0 mark. Incomplete equation always awarded a half a mark.
Okay, more girls, kindly you can go ahead and ask your question. More girls? More girls?
Okay, I was asking.
Yes. Carry on.
When answering questions on organic chemistry, are you required to balance it and write its states of matter?
Now, always an equation is always correct if it's balanced. In organic chemistry, state symbols are not necessary because it depends with the conditions. For example, water can be liquid or can be gaseous state. So in organic chemistry, state symbols are not necessary, are not compulsory. You can leave them out. But in organic, state symbols are compulsory.
Okay, there is a question from Illuvia Secondary School. They're asking, for equations involving organic compounds, does one need to write state symbols?
Not necessary. It is not necessary to write state symbols involving organic compounds.
Kindly, could we get more questions from the schools? Any school that has a question, you can raise up your hand so that we can give you the permission to go ahead and ask your question. As well, you can type your questions and we will respond to them. Yes, more girls? More girls?
Okay, another one.
Yes.
When calculating moles and you get
Yes.
0.000123678, are you
Yes.
supposed to write it in still the 4 significant, no, 4 decimal place thing?
In 4 decimal place?
Yes.
Not necessarily. You can, I said the minimum number of decimal places. You can write the one which are in the calculator, but the minimum number of decimal places for moles should be 4.
Okay, the other one.
Yes.
In organic chemistry, the one for adding an oxidizing agent.
Yes.
Where does the ethane come from, and why not write ethanol? 1, 2.
Yeah. Where?
Where does the ethane come
Yeah.
from, and why can't we write ethane 1, 2?
Oh, you are adding ethene. You are adding to an acidified potassium manganese 7 or acidified potassium dichromate 6.
Yes, 1.
When you add that, what is always correct is ethane 1, 2 diol, because they are 1, they are 2. You must indicate the number 1, 2 diol.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please take note that we are not taking content questions. For the schools who are asking questions pertaining content, kindly you can ask them to your teachers. Don't ask them to the facilitator, kindly. There is a question from Katelembo Center of Excellence. They're asking, how many marks will one be penalized if he or she fails to write the state symbols?
Half a mark. That is incomplete equation, and incomplete equation is always penalized by half a mark.
There is another question from Mua Farm Secondary School, and they're asking, is grammar marked in chemistry?
If there are no similar kind of words, for example, bumpo. If you write bumpo, then there is no other word which can be correlating to bubbles. So you cannot be penalized in that case. If there is no any word which is similar to the one which you have written.
Okay, there is another question from Katelempo Center of Excellence. They're asking, what are some of the topics that are tested in paper 1 chemistry?
Always, paper 1 is a very wide paper. It covers almost close to 18 out of 24 topics. So you need to have the content. You need to have to be familiar with the content in chemistry.
Kindly, I'm once again reminding you, kindly, we are not taking content questions. Any question containing content matter, we'll advise you to ask them to your teachers, kindly. Yes, Changuli? Changuli Secondary School? Changuli, okay, Chani.
Okay. Thank you so much. I would like to confirm something you said about industrial processes. You said one should also know about reaction mechanism.
Yeah?
Could you please elaborate that?
Kindly repeat your question and be more audible.
Okay, there is something you asked about, you said about this industrial process. This idea of reaction mechanism, what does this mean, please?
Reaction mechanism. In short, I mean the reactions which are involved in that processes. You need to master them. Yeah.
Okay, Changuli Secondary School. Kindly go ahead and ask your question. Changuli Secondary School. Kindly go ahead and ask your question.
When the question requires you to obtain components of the mixture, and one of the components in ammonium chloride, will it undergo sublimation or thermal decomposition, dissociation?
The substances which undergo sublimation, we have the benzoic, we have ammonium chloride. No, not ammonium chloride. Ammonium chloride will undergo thermal dissociation. Thermal dissociation. Another substance, we have iodine, we have aluminum chloride, we have iron 3 chloride, we have the benzoic acid, and we have the dry ice. So ammonium chloride does not undergo sublimation, it undergoes thermal dissociation. Thermal dissociation. Answered?
Okay, there is a question from Illuvia Secondary School, and they're asking, can a candidate be penalized until they get negative marks in a question?
It cannot be possible. You cannot be penalized until you get negative. Just get 0.
There is another question from Katelempu Center of Excellence, and they're asking, when writing state symbols in an equation, where exactly do I write?
Good. Now, for example, if you write sodium chloride, the state symbol here is a solution. So you write here as a subscript, at the end as a subscript. You write at the end as a subscript. I'm saying if you are writing state simple, write as a subscript at the end of that formula of the compound.
There is another question from Moore Farm Secondary School. They are asking, in questions where you are needed to differentiate, can you use tables or use continuous prose?
You can use either. For example, differentiate between an element and a compound. So in that case, define what an element is, then you say while. So you must use the differentiative word and differentiative word. When you use a table, we can also allow it.
Okay, there is another question from Moore Farm Secondary School, and they're asking, is it necessary to give answers in units?
Your question here is it in units. Which units now, please? Are you penalized if the equation is correct and not balanced? So if you don't know the units, just leave them alone. Don't give the units if you don't know. But if you know, give the correct units.
Okay, let us have another question from K.C.S.E Secondary School. Kindly, K.C.S.E, you can go on and ask your question.
My name is Eunice Mwende. My question is, suppose you are told to list you are told to list question. Are you able to use the Roman numbers or you leave it?
List. You can even use you can use numbers, no problem, 1, 2, 3, or you can use dashes.
Okay, let us have another question from Kidima ABC Secondary School. Kidima ABC Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
My question goes this way. In stating the condition necessary for reaction, for example, polymerization, is it a must you specify the temperature or pressure?
Not necessarily. In polymerization, you don't need to specify. Just talk about high temperature and pressure in polymerization. But in another reactions, you need to be very specific to the conditions. And always the condition, you don't give the range. For example, a temperature of 100 to of 106 to 108. No, just give any temperature in between. One value, like temperature of 107, like that, or even 180. Don't give the range.
Okay, let us have another question from Kamutanga Secondary School. Kamutanga Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. Kamutanga.
When tackling periodic table questions and you are told that the letters are not actual symbols, and by mistake you write the chemical symbol of the element, can you be penalized for this?
Actually, we don't penalize, but we advise kindly students to be using the letters which they are given. We don't penalize, but please be using the letters which you are given.
Okay, there is another question from Katelempu Center of Excellence, and they're asking, kindly tell us the 6 topics that are not tested in paper 1. As you said, before, that it is 18 out of 24 are tested.
I said approximately, they cannot be less than 18 topics. So that means in paper 1, you need to have the content of the whole syllabus. So here we are not specific to which topics are not tested. But the emphasizing is know the content because they asked many of the topics.
Okay, there is another question from Iluvia Secondary School, and they're asking, can a candidate score if he or she writes a chemical reaction equation in preparation of salts instead of writing the theory part?
I think there, when you are taught to describe, if you give equations, then you'll be penalized for not mentioning apparatus.
Okay, let us have a question from Hapa Kitanga Secondary School. Hapa Kitanga Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. Hapa Kitanga, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, my question is, if you are writing a chemical reaction and the state symbols, you mix the letters, the capital and the small letters, and they are correct, are you penalized?
Yeah, you'll be penalized. State symbols are always expressed in terms of small letters.
Okay, let us have another question from Kitanga Boys High School. Kindly, Kitanga Boys High School, go ahead and ask your question. Kitanga Boys.
I'm asking about numbering of questions and grammatical English. Is it being penalized?
I said grammar is, we don't mark grammar in chemistry, but we check, is there any other word which means the same thing? So if there is another word, then that's where you will be penalized.
Okay, let us have a question from St. Valentine's High School. St. Valentine's, kindly go ahead and ask a question. St. Valentine's.
Okay, so I was asking on questions pertaining description, if you miss out on one step, will I have wronged the whole process or I'll be penalized on the step I have missed?
Marking stops where the steps goes wrong, please.
Okay, let us have another question from Kidima Secondary, Kidima ABC Secondary School. Kindly, Kidima, you can go ahead and ask your question.
My question goes this way. Do you say that copper changes or turns to brown during reaction? Clarify.
One, when you say it turns, you mean you are changing the orientation of things. So the word which we use changes. It changes, means the color is from this to this. When you say it turns, then you have changed the orientation. If you are right, you turn down to the left. That you are changing the orientation. So the word which you use changes.
Okay, let us have a question from K.C.S.E Secondary School. K.C.S.E, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
My question is, what if you are writing an equation and to confuse the states of matter? Will you be awarded any mark when the question is correct?
Come again, please.
What if you are writing an equation and you
Yes.
confuse the states of matter? Will you be awarded any mark when the equation is correct?
When I said the equation is always correct if it is balanced. It's always complete if it has stay simple. So correct, I have a mark. If it's incorrect, 0. Without stay simple. If it's correct without stay simple, I have a mark. Clear? We penalize, I have a mark for stay simple.
Okay, let us have a question from Katoloni Secondary School. Katoloni, go ahead and ask your question. Katoloni Secondary School.
Yes, my question was about in stating the formula. I was asking, what if you don't remember the definition and you write the formula? Are you penalized or not? Thank you.
When you are told.
Like in Boy's law, you are told to state the law and you don't remember the definition, but you write the formula like P1 V1 is equals to P2 V2. Are you penalized or not?
Yeah, you are penalized. You must state because there you need to indicate the condition for that law.
Okay, let us have a question from K.C.S.E Secondary School. K.C.S.E, kindly go ahead and ask your question. K.C.S.E Secondary School. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. K.C.S.E Secondary School.
My question is, suppose you are told to explain, to state and explain, and you fail to explain fully. Will you get penalized?
There are two parts of that question: state and explain. If you are told to state, then continue and give the explanation. If, for example, you state wrongly and you give correct explanation, then everything will be incorrect, will be wrong. You'll be penalized fully. But if you state correctly and explain wrongly, then you will score mark for this stating.
Okay, let us have a question from K.C.S.E Secondary School. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. K.C.S.E Secondary School. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
My question is in test of oxygen. Do you say it rekindles or it relights a glowing, please?
I've not heard it clearly, please. Can you repeat it once again?
About test of oxygen, do you say it relights or it rekindles a glowing?
Yeah, it
on
is.
test of oxygen. Do you say it relights or it rekindles a glowing?
Oh, it relights a glowing splint. Relights. Oxygen relights a glowing splint.
Okay, let us have a question from Kasinga Secondary School. Kasinga Secondary School, go ahead and ask your question. Kasinga Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. Kindly, Kasinga, let's have some order. Kasinga?
Yes, my question is.
Kindly, could you just reduce the volume of your PA system?
My question is, when you are setting the Avogadro's constant, Are you supposed to state 6.023 times 10 power 23 or 6.0 times 10 power 23?
Always use the maximum number of decimal places there. So it should be 6.023 times 10 to the power 23.
Okay, let us have a question from Kitaini Secondary School. Kitaini, you can go ahead and ask your question.
My question is this: if you are asked to state the constant, the Avogadro's law, and you add the constant, are you penalized?
Always, any law must have a condition. Any law must have a condition. At constant temperature and pressure, equal volumes of gases contain equal number of molecules. So here you are very clear. The constant is what? Temperature and pressure.
Okay, let us have another question from St. Valentine's Girls High School. Kindly, St. Valentine's, you can go ahead and ask your question. St. Valentine's Girls High School, you can go ahead and ask your question. St. Valentine's Girls High School. St. Valentine's.
Yes, I was asking that question about describing a process. When I miss out on one point, will I be penalized? And if I use a diagram instead of words, will I also be penalized?
Diagram, if you use a diagram, sometimes we are wordfully because there is apparatus which you have shown, and also the explanation is still there.
Okay, let us have a question from Kamudanga Secondary School. Kindly, Kamudanga Secondary School, you can go ahead and ask your question.
And a question.
Yes.
And a question of stating the condition of a certain reaction, and one of them is temperature. Is it a must you write the range, and will you be penalized when you just state the temperature alone or when you write a wrong range?
I say please and please never write range. Give a specific value. In your textbook, they give a range. Like for example, 160 to 180. Give any value between that range. Give a specific value. Don't give a range.
Okay, let us have a question from Kilima ABC Secondary School. Kindly, Kilima ABC, you can go ahead and ask your question.
My question is that, do we say hydrogen burns with a pop sound or it produces a pop sound?
Hydrogen gas extinguishes a burning splint with a pop sound. Extinguishes a burning splint with a pop sound. Don't say it burns, because when you say it burns, it means it is burning when it produces pop, 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 like that. So the point is, it extinguishes a burning splint with a pop sound.
Okay, there is a question from Moore Farm Secondary School, and they're asking, when writing reversible equations, is it a must to indicate the reversible sign?
Yeah, not necessarily, but it's good if you can remember.
Okay, there is another question from Chambuko Secondary School, and they're asking, when told to describe certain processes, and instead he or she uses chemical equations, how much marks is one awarded?
You'll be awarded half number of marks, which is assigned to that question, because you are not giving out the apparatus.
Okay, there is a question from Summaries Girls High School, and they are saying, pardon me, you said ammonia chloride does not undergo sublimation. Therefore, what does it undergo?
Ammonium chloride, it undergoes thermal dissociation. Thermal dissociation, where it's dissociating because of heat.
Okay, there is another question from Chemudeke Secondary School, and they're asking, in the contact process, do we use platinum catalyst or is it platinized asbestos?
The point there, the catalyst is platinum. So no matter which you are using, we are looking on the platinum.
Okay, there is another question from Kitanga Boys High School, and they're asking, can we express answers of radioactivity by diagram form?
Like which? Just give an example so that I can clarify.
Okay, there is another question from Mungala Secondary School. Okay, we're not going to take that content. Okay, there is another question from Iluvia Secondary School. They're asking, when asked to identify compounds in a reaction, say flow charts, can I use their chemical formula to identify, or do I strictly use its name?
Yeah, when you are told to identify, I say there is open-ended question there. You can use the name if you remember it correctly, or you can use the chemical formula. So you have an option.
Okay, there is another question from KCSE Secondary School, and they're asking, can one be penalized for using flowcharts in explaining the industrial process?
No, you cannot be penalized.
Okay, there is another question from Kitanga Boys High School. They're asking, when answering questions concerning differentiation of flames, will a candidate use tables or conjunctive words such as while?
If you use table, no problem. If you use while, no problem. So it's your own liberty.
Okay, let us have a question from Kitulu Day and Boarding Secondary School. Kindly go ahead and ask your question.
I'm Joshua and have two questions. One, will you be penalized for let's say you are asked to explain how you in preparation of a certain salt and you use equations, will you be awarded any marks? And the second one, can you write the answer when you are asked to calculate the number of moles in standard form? Thank you.
In chemistry, we don't allow answers in standard form. Secondly, if you are told to explain and use now equation, there you need at least to show the changes. You need to show the changes there. For example, if you are told explain why hydrogen is able to reduce copper 2 oxide, but it's not able to reduce magnesium oxide. So there you need to show now an explanation, reasons. If you use an equation, you are not showing the reason.
Okay, let us have a question from Catoloni Secondary School. Kindly, Catoloni, you can go ahead and ask your question.
My question is, when you are given a definition, do you use a mathematical expression?
No. Just give it the definition. Don't use the explanation, mathematical expression there.
Okay, let us have a question from Kasinga High School. Kasinga, you can go ahead and ask your question. Kasinga? Kasinga High School, you can go ahead and ask your question.
What if you write a wrong states of compound? Will you be penalized?
Yes, you'll be penalized half a mark for the wrong state symbols. You'll be penalized half a mark for wrong state symbols, please.
Okay, let us have a question from Mungala Secondary School. Mungala Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
I'm Anne from Mungala, and I have a question, which is asking, are you allowed to write an answer in standard form?
No, in chemistry, we don't allow standard form question answers.
We also have another.
Okay.
Sorry for that. You can go ahead and ask your question. Mungala Secondary School.
Okay.
Are you penalized when you are asked to give a procedure of preparing a given salt bath? You are given incorrect apparatus, but the procedure is correct.
Yes, to be penalized.
Okay, let us have another question from Chahani Secondary School. Chahani Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask a question.
I'd like to pose a question.
Kindly, Chahani, be audible. Chahani, be audible.
I'm asking about. I'm asking a question on preparation of salt. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we are hearing.
Okay. There are those. Okay, there are those students that have a problem with the working, but they have the idea. Are they allowed to maybe use well-labeled diagrams, well-directed and labeled diagrams to explain procedures in salt preparation?
Yes. When you are describing, I said you must show the apparatus and you must show the reagents. So the moment you draw the diagram, then you have shown the apparatus and you have shown the reagents. So you will score the marks.
Okay, let us have another question from Moore Farm Secondary School. Kindly, Moore Farm, you can go ahead and ask your question. Moore Farm, kindly let's have some order. Okay, let us have another question from Katoloni Secondary School. Katoloni?
I'm Vobek from Katoloni, and I'm asking if you are given a diagram to complete, then you complete and you draw correctly and you name it, let's say, wrongly. Are you penalized?
You name it wrongly.
Yeah.
You'll be penalized for naming wrongly.
Amen.
Okay, let us have a question from Mungala Secondary School. Kindly, Mungala Secondary School, you can go ahead and ask your question. Mungala Secondary School.
Yes, I'm Dennis. I'm asking, is one penalized when he or she misses to name an operator in a drawing question? Thank you.
Come again, please.
Pardon?
Okay, is one penalized when he or she misses to name an operator in a drawing question? Thank you.
To name the operator. You must draw a well-labeled diagram. Well-labeled. When writing an equation, Kwandanze, question from Kwandanze. When writing an equation, will you be penalized when joining the words? Yes, it is always penalized. Always a word or formula, the letters should be separate, not joined. Letters be separate, not joined.
Okay, there is a question from Kasinga High School. They're asking, when calculating moles of a compound, what if you write a wrong formula for the compound? Is the calculation any marks?
When you are writing the formula always must be correct. You'll always be penalized if the formula there is incorrect. The formula must always be correct.
Okay, there is another question from Changoli High School, and they're asking, do we label diagrams on the right-hand side or both?
where you decide to label, you can label.
Okay, let us have a question from K.C.S.E Secondary School. K.C.S.E Secondary School, you can go ahead and ask your question.
My question is, suppose you are answering a question and you make some errors and you, for example, you cancel, will you get penalized?
For canceling?
Yeah.
No, we don't mark cancelled work. We always mark the work which you have not cancelled.
Okay, let us have a question from Changuli High School. Changuli, you can go ahead and ask your question. Changuli, you can go ahead and ask your question.
When writing a word equation, is there any need to write a state symbols?
Word equation?
Yes.
Always in chemistry, we don't write word equations in Form 4 level. We always write chemical equations. So the chemical equations is always correct if it is balanced. If it's not balanced, that is not correct, and you are added 0. It's always complete if it has testing. Get it clear?
There is a question from Moore Farm Secondary School, and they're asking, in case you are calculating the empirical formula and you have used all the space, can you transfer the question to the page? I think that is supposed to be the last page.
Yes, you can transfer. You always mark, but you indicate continuation at the last page or which page. You specify the page. You always check.
Okay, there is another question from Kwandanze Secondary School, and they're asking, if you are asked to name a compound and you give the formula, will you be penalized?
If you are told to name, just give the name. The IUPAC name. IUPAC name.
Okay, there is a question from Pakitanga Secondary School, and they are asking, what is the best specific significant figure to use when calculating any in chemistry?
I said you use 2, 3, 4 rule. 2, 3, 4 rule, which means volume, if in decimal, should always to be to 2 minimum decimal places. Molarity, 3 minimum 3 decimal places. And moles, 4 decimal places minimum. You can add, you can use another, but the minimum I've given.
Okay, there is another question from Sunrise Girls High School, and they're asking, when drawing an arrow to represent a dative bond, is there a specific direction to which it should face?
Yes, there is a specific direction. If, for example, you are drawing ammonium ion, the atom which gives the 2 electrons is nitrogen. So the arrow will point the hydrogen to mean the electrons have been contributed by the nitrogen. So there is a specific direction.
Okay, there is another question from Muvuti Boys High School. They're asking, in writing the ores of metals, can you give the chemical formula rather than the ore's name?
It depends with the question, whether you are told to give the formula or you are told to name. If you are told to name, give the name. If you are told to write the formula, give the formula. If you are told to identify, then you can write, you have an option there. You can write what you know, the name or the formula.
Okay, there is another question from Kwandanze High School, and they're asking, if you are asked to give the type of reaction in a flowchart and you state the process, will you be penalized?
Yes, you'll be penalized because it's a type of reaction. It's the type of reaction which you are told to state, not anything else, not the process, but the type of the reaction.
Okay, there is another question from Chambuko Secondary School, Chambuko Secondary School, kindly go ahead and ask your question. Chambuko Secondary School.
I'm David Lemayan. So my question is, you are in a state of, you are in an exam room, then you find you have answered a question, but at the end, after you have finished the paper, you discover that the answer you answered, a certain question is not correct. Then you go forward and rub or cancel. First question, are you supposed to cancel across? Then second question, are you going to write at the back of the paper? So my tense is, the examiner will, he or she think that I've cheated.
No.
Or,
at any given time, you don't mark cancelled work. So if you cancel, we'll know that you have cancelled, and you indicate the answer is at this page. So you indicate the page at which the answer you have given is.
Okay, Chambuko, you can go ahead and ask your question. Chambuko Secondary School. Chambuko. Okay, there is a question from KCSE Secondary School, and they're asking, for example, when asked to state the uses of hydrogen, and you answer, pardon me, there is a question from KCSE Secondary School, and they're asking, for example, when asked to state the uses of hydrogen, and you answer, used in food industry, and don't specify, are you penalized?
At any given time, I say, if you are told to state the uses, it must first be a commercial use. And you need to be specific, which in what or what purpose does hydrogen used in food industry? For example, hydrogen is used in hardening of oils to fats. Hardening of oils to fats. That is in food industry. So I thank you for joining me in my presentation. And I request you, one, to maintain calmness in the school, protect yourself from this COVID-19, sanitize, wash your hands, follow all the regulations which are given by the Ministry of Health and the government, so that you keep yourself safe. So have a nice day and God bless you.